Hello and welcome. I'm Helen Atkinson, Managing Editor at Supply Chain Brain. I'm excited to be moderating this webinar today, sponsored by ORTEC, the title for which is The Power of Adaptability in Next-Gen Routing Solutions. Later in the webinar, we're going to open up for Q&A questions with questions from you, the audience. Please submit questions at any time using the tab at the bottom of your screen. We will not be using people's titles or company names, so go ahead and ask anything you like. If you don't see your question come up during the webinar, please be assured ORTEC will reach out to you offline. But first, we're going to have a thought leadership session with our speakers. Here's our topic. We're going to explore the critical elements of scalability, flexibility, and adaptability in the transformative world of next-generation routing solutions. In this session, we will uncover how these key factors play a pivotal role in maximizing operational efficiency and driving sustainable success in today's dynamic business environment. Not only will we have real examples from Smithfield Foods to see how organizations have achieved unparalleled efficiency and competitiveness in their routing solutions. We'll also be tapping into expert insight and best practices from our industry expert about proven strategies and best practices for harnessing the power of scalability, flexibility, and adaptability to elevate operational performance. We'll also get some practical implementation tips. So let's meet our presenters. First, we have John Barker, who is Fleet Safety and Routing Efficiency Advocate at Smithfield Foods Inc. John is a seasoned transportation professional who started on the carrier side before he came over to Smithfield. He's a longtime advocate of improved technology to help streamline and automate routine tasks, allowing people to focus on solving problems and developing the business. John's most recent undertaking has been to establish a private fleet for Smithfield. We also have speaking today Matt Wissey, Senior VP at ORTEC, who is a supply chain executive and organizational thought leader. Matt is responsible for ensuring ORTEC's customers continue to grow and succeed through data-driven continuous improvement. He also guides ORTEC's efforts into new markets and industries across North and South America. Welcome to both of you, John and Matt.
Hi, Alan.
Let's get into this thought leadership session. Hi, welcome. John, how important is route efficiency in your transportation operations, and what specific challenges have you encountered in optimizing this aspect of your business?
Route efficiency is really everything in this business. Anybody who's been involved in transportation is familiar with the concept of deadhead. You need to minimize it. Among the difficulties that we've had in that regard is the fact that we haul only our own product. Therefore, all our routing needs to be tailored to that in and amongst our various facilities.
Right, so you obviously have a lot of cold chain stuff to think about where timing is very critical. Is that right, John?
Yeah, timing is everything, especially with fresh product. It has limited lifespan, and you really need to get it from place to place when it's ready.
Yeah, I would have thought the pressure would really be on that. So, Matt, with a case like Smithfield, where you've got this huge operation with lots of time-sensitive cargo, what should somebody look for in a supply chain optimization partner to demonstrate its expertise and understanding of specific industries and what a specific customer needs?
Yeah, that's a great question, Helen. So what it comes down to, the strategy of the individual customer, what they're trying to do. Companies today so often forget to engage employees, the ones that are working the hardest and really giving them a voice. And these are the employees that are creating the largest risk. We talk about culture. We talk about the change that's required, and we often underestimate that change. As we see people moving from these first generation systems into something more modern and current and more expansive, we get to a point where we see drivers, see warehouse people not sure how to work, because it becomes the same answer as they had before. So if you take that to, with these older systems, is these data quality becomes quite the big issue too, and it always has been. But as they're looking to get to these best practices to make these decisions, you have to look at these items, the data quality, the employee culture, get into a change manager approach, and understand the customer strategy that you're trying to achieve.
Right. That I would have thought that's a big issue, because I know that with last generation routing tools, they tended to be a little bit one size fits all. And so what happens then is that the people who are dealing with routing and dispatch every day will cheat the system and say, look, I know, because I've been working in this industry for, doing this for 20 years, that actually we need to send the truck on this route rather than what the computer says. And now with the next generation one, you've got a much more tailored approach. And so I can see that there would be a lot of change management with asking those people on the ground to be able to change their mentality and trust the system, and also input into the system. John, could you speak to that a little bit about how, when you were transitioning from a more inflexible and manual optimization tool to a new sort of more customized, adaptable solution, what were the key factors that came into that, and how did you deal with the change management that was necessary to really get the most from this system?
After after living with a previous tool that was very set in its ways, very much determined in how you operated, really one of the basic challenges we had when moving to ORTEC was to make sure that we let the team, the implementation team, know exactly what we wanted. If you can tell a company like this, a vendor like this, exactly what it is that you want from the very beginning, it really goes a long way in order to make sure that that implementation goes smoothly and you get everything that you can out of it. Yeah, in terms of change management, in this particular case, we're still a pretty small team. We were working with largely manual processes. And so as a result of that, change management wasn't as difficult as it can be in other places. But I know when I've done these sorts of things in the past, you'll find that the temperament of a planner is always that they can do that better than anyone else can. And so and really the job almost requires that. So being able to show them how it is that this is actually improving over their what they've been doing in the past is really important in order to get that buy-in.
Right, that's great. Thank you, John. I wanted to touch on something that you said, that you needed a vendor who could respond to very specific requests about what you needed. But I'm curious to know perhaps that there are some capabilities that you didn't know this system could do, this technology could achieve, and if there was a certain amount of collaboration. Matt, were you was ORTEC able to come in and say, well, look, here's something you could do that you didn't even know about before?
Yeah, anybody who's worked in trucking before thinks they know what a dispatch screen should look like. And this world of optimization, it actually functions a little bit differently than a traditional dispatch tool. The screens look a little bit different. But in this case, the implementation team was able to come in. We were able to have a conversational discussion of here's what we need from the tool. They put their heads together, and in very short order, we're able to say, what if it looked like this? And that's really that was really important, and it was a key step in getting the design that would do what we needed it to.
Right. So a real genuine change. Matt, is that something you've typically seen upon implementation, that people are able to change the whole way they do things?
Absolutely, Helen. And John said the key two words is what if. And it's something that we've talked about. I've been a supply chain guy all my life, and I've always preached, especially in the final mile, is talk about what if. we as supply chain people get caught up in the same routine we've had for 20, 30, even 50 years in some cases, that it's X number of stops and X number of routes, and it's X number of amount of weight on the truck and to move it through. Today's technology has the ability to truly allow you to say, what if we did something different? Whether it's planning, it's really an opportunity to reset the entire strategy if they ask the what if. And that's the most exciting part about the technology and the solutions today.
Great, that sounds fantastic. John, obviously with trucking, there's a labor issue, driver shortage, etc. How critical has it been for you to implement solutions that not only streamline operations, but also contribute to a positive work environment for your employees?
In our particular case, the thing that we offer our driver employees that sets us apart from trucking in general is the ability to have very predictable schedules and very predictable home time, and yet at the same time, using our logistics chain and our network, our freight basket here within the company, be able to provide them the sort of productivity that's required in order to support the lifestyle they want to maintain. And so what we've found is that we've been able to sort of mass customize our drivers' schedules so that they're getting the home time they need when they need, and yet at the same time, we've prearranged their activity for the week when they're out so that they are constantly moving. Keeps the drivers very happy, really minimizes our turnover.
That's terrific. So Matt, tell me about how a supply chain optimization partner can ensure that its technology solutions are adaptable in that way and in other ways, to work around drivers' personal appointments and requirements, and also to accommodate the changing business strategies at the client.
Yeah, Helen, it starts at really the basics of what I talked about with the company strategy and kind of awakening the organization to changing their business a little bit. And what we do is we always start with really three things, and we can call them best practices, but they're really part of the overall direction I give to our clients. Is number one, and this is in the boardroom, this is at the executive level, is number one, you treat this as a time for an entire reset, not just in the business model, but in internal alignment. As I mentioned before about these first generation systems, which were incredible at the time, it created a reactionary manual process, whether it's in load building or in delivery, any of these final mile operations. And we don't talk too much, historically, about turnover, about training, about engagement with your partner, with a vendor, data quality. And, part of that is this reset is we don't come in talking about a rip and replace, because that would be a mistake, because you end up doing the same manual solutions you did before, even with world-class optimization. So that's the first one. There's two more quick ones, is making sure that, does the final mile group, does that final mile executive have a seat at the table when it comes to overall business strategy? We've lost that over the last decade, last 20 years. It's become automatic, and there's all different theories as to why routing happens at night and so on. But we've kind of lost that seat at the table in the final mile. And number three is we have to own that change management, together. And with the partner, and tie that back to that business strategy. And that's exactly what John and Smithfield have been very successful in doing along their journey to transfer their organization.
Fantastic. So Matt, let me ask a little bit more about that. So, when you're developing and implementing these technology solutions, how do you help companies prioritize the human impact? Can you maybe give me some specific examples about, training or onboarding or whatever?
Yeah, for us, what we found is, as we get to this latest, a little bit of ORTEC, we're founded 40 years ago as an optimization company, and that's hard to understand what that really truly means. So what we've done is we actually have a change management division. So we've brought in, so as we do every new implementation, we talk about change. We talk about the executive level, we talk about the user level. And then because you get into these implementations, it's natural for a user to say, okay, I have my previous system we've had for 20 years, and I learned it from the previous planner who learned it from the previous planner. And at the end of the day, I just call the driver and tell them how to route the vehicle. And so as we walk through those things to implement that change management piece, that everybody is aligned. So we take it on the back, on the back side too, is if we look at selling software, okay, the world of software sales and the world technology sales really hasn't changed since, I think it was John Henry Patterson at NCR 100 and some odd years ago, with the rule of you sell and you sell more and you move on. Software companies are afraid to stick around. And so because we're an academic optimization company at our core, we want to know what those metrics are. And that's really been a very specific best practice for us, is to say, how are we going to measure success? Is it cost per mile at this number? Is it load capacity at this number? And we guide you through for years, for as long as you're a partner, and we like to take accountability for it too.
Right. So very much partnership and accountability.
Absolutely.
See that. John, so let's talk about change management. And I'm curious to know what has changed at Smithfield, and how have you managed it in terms of your transportation operations? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so our previous tool, first of all, I said that I said we had a tool and we had manual processes, and those things sound like they're contradictory. They're really not contradictory if your tool is primitive enough that it doesn't allow you to plan dynamically and make changes dynamically. You end up, maintaining a worksheet. In our case, it was in Excel off to the side where you're doing your work, and then you do that work all over again in the system. The other thing that this has allowed us to do as we've grown the fleet is it's allowed us to change our dispatch structure, so that we've got folks that are concentrating on the planning aspect of it, making sure that the planning is done in an excellent way, the freight is properly coordinated, all of that sort of thing, and people who are working with the drivers and making sure that their needs are being met. And everyone in trucking is aware of that as a planner slash fleet manager setup. But if you've got the wrong tool, you don't have the ability in order to do that. You end up stuck in a different mode that's a lot more rigid and a lot less nimble in terms of what you're trying to accomplish.
Right. And so the rigidity and the need for nimbleness is very much, I think, about what you were referring to, this sort of feedback loop, that you're not just creating these route plans and sending them out into the ether. It's really important to get back, all the information about how those worked out and whether there's room for improvement. John, can you talk a little bit about how you managed to get that sort of feedback loop flowing in a healthy way?
Well, I mean, having good communication tools is very important to do that. Having information at your fingertips is also really critical to that. So having the information available, easily updatable, within our dispatch tool is really, really important, so that we can make those changes on the fly. And then also, in a world where there's a great deal of work from home going on, you need good communication tools off to the side as well. Those things end up working in concert. And so you've got a conversation going off to the side where you're talking about what your challenges are, but at the same time, you've got readily available information from the dispatch tool, so that you can quickly solve those problems. And with the optimization component in it, it's really the thing that you want to get to, where you've got the tools are resolving your ordinary, your day-to-day tasks that are kind of rote, and then your people, they're freed to use their brains in order to solve the problems.
Great, that's fantastic. Matt, could you talk a little bit about your sort of broader experience with implementations where companies have had to, bring people into, inputting data where perhaps they haven't before, or feedback where perhaps they haven't before. Has that been a challenge?
Yeah, it is, and it's not a new challenge either, Helen. If you go to I use a one-page graph. It came from the folks at Boston Consulting about a year ago about OTIF, on time in full, and it said that over the last 10 years, and the last 10 years ended before COVID, January of 2020. It talked about on time in full, for manufacturers in North America getting worse, not better. And we have all these tools, we have all this data. And 10 years ago, we all would have been here talking about not enough data. How do we get more data? Well, now we're drowning in data, and overall performance in the world is getting lower. Now, there's a lot of other ingredients into that too. There's inventory and so on, but the bottom line is it's lower, and we're spending more money on people. So it comes down to, we talked about, is understanding and agreeing on the strategy so that everybody is aligned down to the driver level. And I'll give another example. I have a lot of conversations about centralizing route operations. If we're routing at local locations, we want to centralize it. People are afraid to centralize that routing because they want that router to have direct communication with the driver, which is true. But the reality of it is, in that same location, that communication is route it this way, and not using any of the tools, not using any of the strategy. The goal is to make sure you are fully engaged to get that feedback that you just asked John about, to make sure it is clear. It doesn't matter if that person is in the office next to them or 1,000 miles away, to make sure you have a clear feedback loop for everybody, and everybody is reacting to any needed changes, and everybody is sharing in the positive metrics.
Right. Yeah. So you want to discourage people doing an end run around the system. So John, be honest, is that still happening from time to time, or is everybody in lockstep at Smithfield?
Oh, the human element is always a challenge. People are unpredictable, and a lot of the time that's the wonderful thing about people.
Fantastic. So I just want to go back to Matt for a minute. Tell me what are some of the main challenges you see when implementing this system? I mean, you obviously you're working with an internal IT department, and you've got the change management. Are there other challenges that we haven't touched on?
Yeah, what we like to do, and I get myself in trouble for it internally, is I like to create problems, because I want people to be aware of the what if. And because we can very easily, and it goes back to the rip and replace comment I made earlier, we can very easily say, this is what it is, do everything the same. When we talk to IT personnel, we don't have an issue. They understand it. They want the bigger and better. They want to. Now, getting it onto the schedules is a little bit of a challenge, but it's not. It's making sure that everybody is aware that we want them to transform their business. And there's two types of clients that we have, and we're experiencing tremendous growth, really proud of it, but we still have two types of clients. We have clients that come to us that want to transform their organization, and then John's a perfect example, and those are great. But we have other ones that say, hey, I've got this older system that I need to replace it. And then we're the ones saying, no, let's go bigger than that. Let's talk about transforming your organization. We're providing them the same thing for both of them, but making them understand. And that's really the biggest challenge, because all the other challenges, driver turnover, capacity, equipment inflation, if you have the right strategy and you have the feedback loops, those problems take care of themselves.
That's great. John, tell me, what was the thinking behind you looking for a route optimization partner?
Well, there's a few things that were really critical as we did this, and some of the things that really kind of apply to this discussion were that, first of all, we needed a tool with flexibility. We needed a tool that would deal with the fact that we have different drivers that do different things. And for example, you've got short haul people that go out and back. You've got long haul people that route run all over the system for a week at a time. And you have to have a tool that can accommodate all those different things. Another thing that was really important to us, in part because we're such a large organization, and Matt's already alluded to ripping something out and starting from scratch. And a lot of companies don't want to do that. In our case, we can't. We're one room in a big house, and we can paint the room, we can change the furniture, the electricity, the plumbing, and the heating and air conditioning. They're all at a corporate level. We needed to be able to integrate with those existing systems, and ORTEC had the ability to do that, whereas some of the other providers, they make you rip it all out. They make you use the tools they want you to use, and that really wasn't working for us.
Wow. Okay. And was the impulse initially you were creating a private fleet for Smithfield? Did you immediately decided that you needed this kind of help, or did you try it the old Excel spreadsheet way first?
Oh, it started out so small that it was absolutely Excel in the beginning, and then we just worked our way up through a couple of different tools. And then even as we're doing that, we're aware of the fact that we've got some established fleets that do different things than what we do. We're refrigerated, we're full trailer load. We've got some people who do other things. Our IT department has a one solution strategy that they try to stick to. So yet another point of our selection process is we had to at least think, if we want to apply this tool to some of those other operations as time goes on, is it flexible enough to do that too? Can it even be divided up so that we can separate those operations and treat them differently?
Right. Right. And so perhaps John, you could just give us a little summary of what the outcome has been so far in terms of the improvements to your transportation operations.
Well, we've had the ability to have a tool that can allow our dispatchers to be productive at a higher level than they were before. They can handle more drivers, they can handle more routes, they can do it more quickly, they can be more hands-on with their drivers. That's important from the human resources side of things, the driver friendliness aspect that most drivers are looking for in their company. At the same time, we're able to really look at what's productive, what's not productive in terms of what we're going to do. And then really the one thing that was really important, we had already gotten big enough that we were broken up into separate little groups, a dispatcher and their drivers. They were all operating independent operations. When we were able to take that and we're able to like bring it together into one basket of drivers and freight for management, we're able to be a lot more nimble in terms of making operational changes as the week goes on, in order to keep everybody productive, keep all of our internal customers happy, and keep our drivers both productive and with good home time, the things they value the most.
Right. Well, that's really interesting what you said, because I think a lot of people believe that a technology, a management technology like this is going to sort of get in between, say, a dispatcher and a rider. That the driver is just going to be dealing with this sort of automated response. But it sounds like it's actually actively increased the amount of engagement or useful engagement between driver and dispatcher. Is that correct, John?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, the technology is just a tool. You use that tool in the way that works best to you. It's in that way, things haven't changed since the days of the stone axe. But but if you're using the tool correctly, then what it's actually doing is it's freeing up time that you can use to be personal with the people who need that contact.
That's terrific. Matt, maybe you could speak to that a little bit about driver engagement. How have you seen that improved?
Yeah, it is for the companies that are doing it right. As in John's case, it really does enhance that engagement. And for example, is we're so caught up in just one-dimensional optimization for all these years that what John gets is the same that the food service company got down the street versus the beverage company down the street. They're all using the same optimization because that's all the technology allowed at the time. And I would never knock it. That's why I started my career consulting in that side of it. But today we get to a point where we build that optimization based on the business strategy of the client and their needs. So we'll range. So even with a data problem, we have a lot of people with data concerns. We don't have to try to build an optimizer that gives you 100% of the answer that eliminates the human. We don't have to do that because we can tolerate that in the build based on how advanced the client is. So once you have that, you engage your drivers, you understand, does this work? Mm-hmm. And we all know, a driver should never look at a route and be super excited because that's not reality. At the end of the day, it's okay, this works. Mm-hmm. And then you work the data, you work the feedback, and you make sure that you've got the program in place to reward the drivers too, to make sure when they're doing it, they're engaged and it's operating effectively for everybody. The drivers get that same bonus, that same benefit everybody else gets. That's important.
Right. And less idling time, less being stuck at docks waiting to unload or pick up. Is that I imagine that's a super important goal too. John, have you seen that?
Well, we could. In our particular case, we lean really heavily on drop and hook. Trailers are preloaded, they're drop loaded. And so in our case, it's being able to react quickly to what actually is loaded and what's due in first. So, even though we've got this solution, this optimized solution, it's constantly in limbo as well, because, I think anybody in any industry will tell you, ideally, you'd like it to be just a big machine and you crank the gears and it operates consistently and predictably. In the real world, that's never quite the way it works out. That's partly where the flexibility is important as well, as to allow us to deal with those things that you think should be predictable and aren't.
Right. Yes. So definitely a technology for an unpredictable world is a good thing. Well, thank you so much to both of you. I think it's time for us to move into our Q&A session. So we're going to bring the audience into this discussion with Q&A. Please submit your questions using the tab at the bottom of your screen. And we will not be using people's titles or company names, so you should feel free to ask anything you like. If you don't see your question answered during the webinar, please be assured the team from ORTEC will reach out to you offline. So let's get going with these questions. One that I saw that was particularly interesting, and it goes back to something that both of you were talking about. So centralization is key for scaling daily operations and improving the routing team skill sets. Conversely, local knowledge needs to improve at local places to be able to answer questions and understand route maintenance. What challenges or wins have you had? I think this is a question for you, John. What challenges or wins have you had around your local teams leading through centralized routing? Like, how is the feedback loop going in that sense?
Yeah, it's really good because by doing it in a centralized basis, as I mentioned, we were kind of splintered off. We had a group of individual operations, and a lot of the time there was overlap between those because of the fact that we have so much movement that free floats across our geography. If somebody needed help with something, they too often were looking to themselves for help and within their own team for help, and then kind of flailing when that didn't happen. Once we can centralize, then we can look at our driver base and our route base globally and say, where's the best place to put that? And that's true whether we're talking about something that is potentially going to be late, or if we're talking about reducing driver delay. We've really done a good job reducing our driver delay that way.
That's fantastic. Here's another question again for you, John. At Smithfield, how do you handle driver pay? Is it part of the ORTEC solution?
Actually, yes. So the driver pay is handled through a report that they built for us that is not part of their standard solution. They have a great deal of ability to customize, and then it feeds directly into our corporate payroll through our corporate payroll system. And I think that I want to make a point about your vendor selection that deals with that as well, and how that works in reality. Because if you go to a lot of vendors, they'll tell you, oh, well, we can interface with this, we can interface with that, we can interface with, we can, they'll say this sort of thing. And when we were talking to ORTEC, they told us, yeah, we can build that in. We can build that in. And I'm kind of like, wait a minute, guys, why should I have confidence in you as a supplier? Because other suppliers are telling me, oh yeah, we can implement, they treat it like it's flipping a switch. And what the folks at ORTEC convinced me of is that that's really not what's happening. They rarely go to two places that have the exact same mix of payroll, equipment maintenance, their accounting systems. They're all different. And so in reality, they're just being honest with us that there's that there's a customization in there that always has to, come into play. It just depends on, are you calling it a customization, which it is, or are you pretending that there's just a switch in the back room someplace that they can flip in order to make it happen?
Right. Wow. So let's talk about implementation a little bit. And I'd like both of you to talk about this. How long did it take to design and implement the current solution between you guys? How long did you work together, and what was the process, and what did the implementation look like? Matt, maybe you could lead on that.
Yeah, I'll give. I didn't directly do John, so I'll let him ask about his particular one. But
Okay.
I'll talk in general though. And I'm going to sound like a software sales guy. Is it depends. It really depends, as John said, what kind of customization, what configuration, what products. And we have an entire division that makes custom software from scratch in those instances too. But generally speaking, the implementation runs from about 3 months up to as long as 12 months when you get into your deeper SAP load building and items of that nature. But we start generally within about 2 weeks from contract signature, blueprinting, and engagement, and walking through that process. But we'll go through John's was, I think, within that range, I'm sure.
Right. And before I get to you, John, Matt, what typically are the systems that need to be integrated? You mentioned, I think, ERP. What else do you need to plug into?
Yeah, well, so if we're going to, depending on how what we're replacing or what we're implementing, it may be integrations from their CRM, from their order management. It may be integrations into their onboard systems, to the drivers, into their warehouse management systems. If we're integrating our load building product to making sure that data, SKUs, dimensions get involved too. So it really comes down to a lot of integrations, and the number of different integrations, different products, and places that we're touching would be dependent on.
So you're really getting it, potentially you're getting into everything, because it ends up being on a route.
Mm-hmm.
It could be, and it also depends if the company's IT group wants to take on and handle these integrations themselves with us supporting. Other times we'll do it with their support, depending on the IT preferences.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. John, yeah, tell us about your specific process. What was involved and how long did it take?
Yeah, in our case, well, we talked to ORTEC for years before we actually got started, because we're a big company and things move slowly. But once they did, they moved very rapidly. So it was only about 5 months in our case to get fully up and running. And that sounds like a long time until you consider how many things that we actually touched, because our ERP is sending load information into ORTEC. ORTEC is building loads for us. We've got so we've got a touch there. We've got ORTEC sending information to our we're sending information over to our telematics group and our driver communication group. So load information goes over there. All that had to be configured. The onboard systems then send back validation back into ORTEC in order to do all of our tracking on that side, make sure that everything is done there. Then we've already talked about the fact that that's integrated within our payroll system. We also use a load tracking system on the corporate side, in which ORTEC has to send information to our telematics provider, and then both systems send to the load tracking service information based on what's going on with the progress of that shipment. And then within a very short period of time here, we'll be creating employees automatically in ORTEC based on what's going on in our human resource system. So lots of touches, lots of stuff going on, and they handled it all well. Our project, despite the fact that I said it took 5 months, a fair bit of that was while our folks were doing a lot of the building of the APIs and things of that nature. But I think it started at the very beginning when we had those discussions about exactly what do we want, agreed on what that was going to look like. And as a result of that, our project actually came in weeks worth of man hours under budget.
Wow, that's very impressive. Thank you. Matt, I have a question here about centralization. I'm just curious to know if you could give an overview of how a system like ORTEC helps centralize the control of route optimization.
Yeah, that's a question we get quite often, and it's been centralization has been something that's been talked about again for many years, and I've had the opportunity to not only do it as a supply chain leader but consult on it many times too, and I've seen plenty of failures as well as a lot of successes. What people don't know is I was actually an ORTEC customer before I joined the company, and one of the things we did was centralize our organization for our routing operations for a Fortune 500 company. But what the golden rule on centralization is to replicate the best practice of what you have locally with the driver. Mm-hmm. So in other words, if that planner spends 10 minutes with each driver once a week to talk about what worked and what didn't work, you replicate that, and you can very easily replicate that on centralization. Mm-hmm. The same thing is if there should be a requirement if you're locally routing and you're only getting, if you have 100 drivers and you're getting only 2 or 3 data changes, time window changes from these drivers a week or a month, that's a flag that you've got to do a better job of getting disciplined before you centralize, and then again replicate it. The other golden rule is you make sure local management is fully vested and versed in the centralization, because there's nothing worse than just centralizing without that buy-in. And then I've seen it too many times where you have a local manager say, well, we don't route anymore, so Mr. and Miss Driver, we can't help you. That's a recipe for failure. So those are the first 2 golden rules on centralization, and then you can really start setting the stage for success long term.
Right. Wow, that's really important. Let's get back into the what ifs and how important those are. I've got a question here. How are you running scenarios for the whole company, meaning to pull all the data together and look for savings in miles? Are you looking for mileage saving from one route or another? And how do you pull together all these what ifs? And how often are you running what if scenarios to try and look for efficiencies in routing? I think that's a question for John.
Yeah, that's a place that we're just kind of scratching the surface of really at this point. At this point, we have meetings with our procurement team to talk about, what's high cost, where can we help in that regard, what pieces are maybe not high cost, but we need those in order to put together a network that actually functions properly. When you're in a business like ours, you have to be very careful about making sure that you keep the pieces in place that are required to have a functional and efficient network. In terms of scenarios, we're really looking forward to having better tools to do that from a future project that we're working on with ORTEC and some of the tools that they've got available to us. There's also the data and analytics, and we've been kind of challenging, I think, to ORTEC in that regard because their existing data and analytics portal, wasn't real well suited to what is in many ways very much like a normal North American OTR company in the way we operate. But you know what? We challenged them, and in very short order, the data and analytics team was able to tell us, yeah, we can actually get you these things. And so, despite the fact that I'm sitting here singing their praises, we'll hold their feet to the fire too if we need something that if we need something that's not there, we're going to ask for it. We won't be shy.
Right. Fantastic. I'm very glad to hear that. John, I'm curious about that issue of analytics. Is that something that you have used or want to use to address perhaps more changes to the business strategy or change management decisions?
Yeah, my experience prior to joining this company was entirely throughout my career on the trucking side of the ledger. And one of the things that I find really, really common there, and I think it's a risk for anybody, is that everybody says they run their business by the numbers. In reality, very few do. They run their business by the numbers to an extent. But then there's other things, whether that might be, not wanting to disappoint your very first customer, or just having a gut feeling on what should work and ends up not working. It's very common within trucking management, distribution management, to want to stick with what you think works when, maybe the numbers tell you that it doesn't work as well as you think it does. And so data and analytics is really critical to doing that. And, I'm not going to say that, everything is on the chopping block in terms of what you might do or not do in order to make those numbers work. But ultimately, the thing that justifies our existence is the money that we save for the company. To part of saving that money is making sure that we provide jobs for drivers that are worth having, so that we don't drive up our costs with turnover. And ultimately, that means that the numbers have to get where they have to get.
Right. Fantastic. So, John, now that you're getting the numbers to where they have to get, do you have any plans for using the private fleet with for other customers than Smithfield? Are you going to white label?
There's some planning in the background that deals with the potential to do that. Certainly, although I've spoken entirely in terms of a private fleet, we've got a system that we can use with external customers as well. Once again, making clear we're not going to run trucks just to run trucks. We're going to do it as a contributor to the corporation as a whole. But we're back to that flexibility thing. Are we going to do short haul? Are we going to do long haul? Are we going to start to get out of the geographic box that's dictated by the location of our plants? All those things are important things that we really need a flexible system in order to change with size, in order to change with our sometimes monthly variations in product flow, or just in terms of overall strategy that's dictated to us by the corporation.
Right. So it sounds like implementing a route optimization software has opened up a number of possibilities that go much deeper than just routing.
Yeah, we can see things that we couldn't see before in the previous world, and that's really what it wants to be. And it's one of my favorite topics. I like to call I like to call it, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I think, at the same time that you're focused on that day-to-day operation, I really think you also need to be thinking at all times in terms of, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We're running out of time now, but we have time for one final question. And this is for Matt. How does Smithfield's journey to best-in-class adaptability and technology relate to others watching today's webinar with their own unique complexities and challenges?
Helen, John and his team have Smithfield has made a strategic decision to look under the hood and use their supply chain as a competitive advantage. And they chose a partner, not a piece of software, as you heard him say. Let's get very specific. First generation systems or manual systems provide everyone the same setup, maybe with a couple of service options. These are great at the time. It's the best technology had. But let's pick, your specific industry. Those on the call today. You all look the same on the surface, but we have difference in density and frequencies and payroll and so on. And most of all, the business strategy for each person is quite different. This is why your individual needs will adjust over time, and make sure you have a partner that does the same. So my ask is that everybody just take a look under the hood, as John did, start asking what if, and let us know where we can answer any questions.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm afraid that's all we have time for. Thank you very much to John and to Matt, and a special thanks to you, the audience. I think we've learned a lot today about the real need for next generation routing technology. We had a lot of questions today, and we'll be answering the ones we didn't get to with you offline. On your screen right now, you'll see a QR code, so you can download ORTEC's white paper, Unlock the Full Potential of Next Generation Routing Technology with ORTEC. There's also contact info for ORTEC there at the bottom. Additionally, those of you who registered are going to get an email later with a link to view the webinar on demand, which you can share with anyone. And there will also be contact information for ORTEC on that. Thank you so much to everyone for your participation. Stay safe, stay happy, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.